All right, the recording has started. The class has officially begun. Maybe I should start it off by saying, ladies and gentlemen, and Luke, let's get going. All right, so last night I was checking the submissions that you guys did for the midterm exam. I was very impressed with what I saw. A few of you had not submitted them at that time. I haven't had a chance yet to check this morning, so I hope that those of you that hadn't submitted them by last night, I hope you've got them in now. My intention today is basically just talk about the submissions and just go through and make some comments that I hope you guys will find helpful. One important thing that was part of the requirement was for you to calculate the gear ratio. And I did that on purpose because that's a lead into what we're going to be doing next week. Next week, we're going to be learning about different machines, different types of machines, how to design various things, and calculating the gear ratio, or if it's not a gear thing, the force multiplication ratio. That's going to be an important part. Okay, so let's just go through. Okay, let's take a look at some of the things that you guys submitted in no particular order here. All right, so Ryan's here. He did exactly what I wanted. He has the little flat. He has the wheel here. The crank is what I'm looking for. The crank. Okay, connected to a gear. So he chose to pair up the 40 tooth gear with the 16 tooth gear, which gave him a gear up ratio of 2.5. So every one time that the big gear turned, this one turned 2.5 times. And then over here, he paired up the 24 tooth gear with the 8 tooth gear, which gave him a gear up ratio of 3. So the total overall multiplier was 5. He submitted 2 different files, which, by the way, one of you did not submit 2 files. I needed to see a file with the entire assembly, and also I needed to see a separate file with just a support structure. So I hope that the one that didn't do that last night, I hope you got my email message and went and fixed that this morning. Okay, so very nice there, Riker. Full credit for that. Looks good for that. Let's see. All right, so Dan's did basically a similar thing. He chose a different way to arrange his gears, and you'll see that he got a very different overall gear multiplier. His first set of gears here, he paired up a big gear with a small gear, which gave him a gear up ratio. But then, interestingly enough, on his second set of gears, he paired a small gear with a big one that gave him a gear down ratio, which is kind of interesting. So he geared up the first ones and then geared down on the second ones, which I never said you couldn't do that. And in fact, a lot of you did that. So using the exact same gears that Riker did, he got a very, very different overall spin multiplier. He got one where for every time he turns the crank, the output flag turns less than 1 time, okay? Which is part of what I wanted you to learn, is that by choosing your gears in various ways, you can get a whole lot of different outputs out of your machine here. Okay, so Annette here did this. Okay, similar type thing. You can see how she paired up her gears here. She got an overall spin multiplier of only 0.3. So that means every time she spins the handle here, the output flag is only going to spin 1/3 of a time. So she would need to spin the output handle or the input handle. She would have to spin that 3 times for every 1 time that this spins. Except there's a problem, and this is why CAD is so useful, because there's a problem with Annette's design. And by the way, Annette, don't worry, I did not dock you points for this. I gave you the credit. Yes, David has picked up on the point. Yeah, spinning that handle is going to be a little difficult. You'll be able to spin it about a half a turn and then whoop, uh-oh, okay? But this is why CAD is so useful, is because now in this case it's pretty simple, but in a bigger case, if you get a big complicated robot or car or whatever it is that you're designing, there could easily be lots of little gotchas in the design there that you wouldn't notice until you CAD it all together. And then once you look at the final CAD thing, then all of a sudden you look at that and you say, uh-oh, where you might not have seen that had you not CAD'd it up. So don't worry, Annette, I'm not going to dock you for that. Now, there is another problem as well. If you look at this support structure, I hope you guys realize that's not going to stand up. With all the weight over here, this guy's he's going to tip down like that. Again, a nice thing that you discover using CAD. So don't worry in that. You still got a really good grade. Okay. So yeah, I prepared a slide here, but you guys were way ahead of me. You guys saw the problem before we needed to. All right, so Simon's got a design here where his overall spin multiplier here, you can see, he's got the same spin multiplier that Annette had, okay? And he also has a very similar problem to what Annette had. Now, if you look up here, you can see that Simon has extended the shaft out here, so hopefully he should be able to spin the handle here without hitting the gears. But I hope you guys see that it's going to hit the ground, okay? Which again, don't worry, Simon, you still, that did not pull your grade down. But again, this is the advantage of CAD and why it's a good idea to CAD your drawings up before you actually do them. Okay, so here's Eve's design. You see here, the way she paired up her gears, she got a multiplier of 1.2. Okay, all right, not much to say there. Oh yes, Sky, thank you. Yeah, Sky also noticed that this shaft here doesn't have a stopper. Yeah, good catch there, Sky. Yeah, so this shaft here could easily spin in and out. So you see how we've got a stopper over on this side? We needed a stopper over on that side too. So good catch there, Sky. Okay, so here's Eve's. Okay, Novelli here. Novelli went the extra mile, so good for you, Novelli. She put in 4 shafts rather than 3, used a couple extra gears here, all right? So her overall spin multiplier here is down to 0.22. So that means, so if she spins the gear, the handle here, if she spins it 1 time, the output flag is only going to spin 22% of a full revolution. So yeah, good job there with Novelli on that. There was one problem that I hope you guys realize. If you look at her support structure up here, you see how the support structure only has 2 holes. Okay, so we need to have 3 holes because we got, or 4. We got 4 shafts going through there. We've only got 3 holes, so that's a bit of a problem. But don't worry, Novelli. I liked the fact that you used an extra shaft and an extra gear, so I didn't dock you too much, but I did have to dock you a little bit for that. Okay, so yeah, you can see here, those are the 2 holes, and she needed to have 4. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Okay, so Tristan here went with a pretty straightforward design. He put a little notch up here in his support structure. Didn't really need to be there, but it certainly doesn't hurt to be there. Makes it look a little cooler, and looks are definitely good to go for. Okay, so you can see his overall spin multiplier here is 0.8. Okay, so a little bit less. So 1 turn of the handle gives you a little bit less than 1 turn of the output shaft. Okay, and again, he has done something that a lot of you guys did. You see that these first gears here, he paired the big gear with the small one, so he got a gear. So this was a gear up situation. But then over on the other side, he did it the backwards way, so then it geared down. So I never said you couldn't do that, so fine. But in reality, the reason you're doing a gear train is because you want to either overall gear up or gear down. So in a real gear train, you would want to make it so all of your gear pairs, they all either gear up or they all either gear down. You wouldn't want to mix a gear up with a gear down in a real train. But that, I never said anything about that for this assignment, so don't worry. Those of you that did this, which was quite a few, I didn't dock you any points for that. Okay, Kaya took an interesting approach here. So Kaya said that instead of having her gears be aligned vertically, she's going to put her gears on the table and spin them that way, which is a great way to do it. So good for you, Kaya. I'm glad to see you did that. Okay, and so the table here is, 4 legs. Some of the gears are on the underneath of the table. Okay, so now in Kaya's case, she arranged it so both of her gear pairs were geared up. So she got an overall spin multiplier of 7.5, which is quite a bit. So every one time that she turns her handle, that output flag is going to turn 7.5 times. So that's a pretty big spin up ratio. Okay. Daniel, Daniel, I have a question for you. Let's see, is Daniel one of the ones online here? I'm going to check here. So Dan's is online. No, I'm not seeing Daniel online here. Okay, so I can't ask him here, but so his gear train here is pretty normal. But if you look at the handle, you guys see the inside of his handle here? It's got this really weird thing. I have no idea how Daniel did that. So I was hoping that Daniel would be online so he could tell us. I have no idea where that came from. Oh, okay, I see somebody coming online here. Does somebody know what how he did that? So Luke, I know you did yours doing SolidWorks. Is that some feature of SolidWorks? So I don't know. So when Daniel when I see Daniel, I'm gonna ask him how in the world that happened. But not a bad thing, just an interesting thing. All right. So Marshall, okay, so here's Marshall's creation. Okay, so Luke is saying that it looks like something went wrong with the file. Yeah, but that's not a random error. I mean, if something went wrong with the file, you would just see kind of a gibberish in there, but that's pretty cool. Zoe, hey, don't worry about it, Zoe. I haven't talked about your creation yet. And in fact, Zoe, you had a really cool creation. So I put yours at the last. So let's talk about some of these others. Okay, so here's Marshall's creation. All right. So Marshall, when he sent me the overall gear thing, he didn't include the support structure with that. He sent it separately, which is okay. I'm not a problem. So and also he didn't put the drive handle on. So I had to guess at which one of these shafts was the drive shaft and which one was the output shaft. So I guessed that this one was the drive shaft. And so using that as a guess, then that means that these first 2 gears are going to gear up, and then the second 2 gears are also going to gear up. So he got a big spin multiplier of 7.5. Now, if my guess was wrong, if this over here was not the drive shaft, but in fact this was the drive shaft, okay, then instead of being a spin up of 7.5, it would be a spin down by a factor of 7.5. Okay. Okay, so Marshall just piped in. He said, yes, that one was the drive shaft. Okay, so no problem, Marshall. Don't worry about it. I like your creation. Simon is saying that he just put in the gears randomly. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Random was fine because I didn't ask for any special order. I just said put in the gears, and I never was worried about the order. Okay, so all right. So what we got here. So David's was very interesting. David did something that a lot of you didn't do, and including me, I didn't do it either. David clearly recognized that this support structure needs to be modified. Otherwise, it's going to just flop over, right? So what David did was he put these in large sections over on the left side and the right side to help the gear structure so it would stand up on its own. So good for you, David. I really like that. However, David, when I worked through the math, I got a gear multiplier of 7.5, and I see in your creation here you put 7.8 to 1. So I'm interpreting that to mean that you calculated your gear ratio. You used a different method. Well, that's the interesting thing about physics is even if you use different methods, if you do it right, you should get the same answer in the end. Okay. Yeah, I'm not too, or I'm curious about that, but I'm not too concerned about it. We got pretty close. So maybe what you did was you just rounded off your calculations partway through. That could be the explanation. But I'm not overly worried about it. Don't sweat it. Okay, let's see what we got next. Okay, Mason. All right. Mason also recognized that if we don't do something to our support structure, it's just going to flop over. So Mason also he modified it. So he put a little foot down here on the bottom, which was good for you, Mason. I'm glad to see you did that. Okay, so here's his thing. He's got an overall gear multiplier of 0.17. So your gear multiplier, this is important. And next week, in fact, we're going to talk about this a lot. So if the multiplier here is less than 1, okay, that means that every time you spin the crank once, this guy spins less than 1. So if your overall gear multiplier is more than 1, okay, then it's the other way around. And that's something that we're going to worry a lot about next week, because next week I'm going to ask you to give me a gear multiplier that's either geared up or geared down by a certain amount. And I'm going to ask you to figure out how would you pair the gears in order to get the gear ratio that I ask for. But for today's assignment, I didn't ask for one. So what you got is fine. Okay. Now Luke. Okay, Luke did something that I thought was really interesting. So he also recognized that the support structure is going to flop over if you don't do something. So he put a little foot on it the way that Mason did. But Luke did something that I want to talk about. This is really cool. Look at Luke's support structure. You see how it's nice and curved here and it's got smooth edges? Let's go back up to Mason's here. Okay, so Mason's support structure and Luke's support structure are very, very similar, but Mason just left it square. Whereas Luke, he went in and he rounded it off like that. Now, I think that's a good thing. Don't worry, Mason, I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. I'm just saying that Luke went the extra step there to give it a little bit more of an artistic look. And now Luke's creation is not functionally superior to Mason's in any way, but aesthetically, it's nicer aesthetically. And that's something that I think you as engineers need to think about, and it's worth us talking about. When you design something for your client, the most important thing is that it has to work. Okay, so Luke's creation and Mason's creation both work equally well. But if in addition to having it work well, if you can go in and do stuff like Luke did here to make it look aesthetically more pleasing, you have a higher chance that you're going to win the contract. Because, I mean, let's suppose that I'm the end client and I put out a bid to 2 different companies that I want you to design me a gear structure. So Mason submits this, Luke submits this. Now, if the amount that they're charging me is the same, if Luke is charging me the same amount that Mason is charging, I'm going to go with Luke's creation. Even though it's functionally equivalent to Mason's, it just looks more pleasing. Okay. Now, if Luke wants to charge me more money than Mason does, then I'm not too sure. Then I might want to go back with Mason's creation, because it'll save me some money. Or then again, I might be willing to pay a little bit extra for Luke's. So this is something that you as engineers need to really think about. In addition to functionality, you also need to think about form. Okay, so Luke, I'm really glad you did what you did here. Okay, now Zoe. Okay, so here is yours. So Zoe, I give you bonus points for creativity. I really like Zoe's creation here. So in fact, it's hard to see Zoe's creation in its full glory in my PowerPoint. Let me go here. Let me share a different screen here. Hang on a second. Let's see, that's not the one I want. Oh, I had this one all set up here, and for some reason it doesn't want to go. Okay, so let's go to here. Hang on a second. Okay, so let's go to, oops, that's Skies. I'm going to come back and talk about Skies. Sky actually wins the prize for the one that made me say wow. But Zoe's also made me say wow. So hang on a second here while I go to Zoe's. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at Zoe's here. Let's zoom in on it. So first off, when I saw that, it looked to me like a bird, and where the with the eyes and the beak. And so Zoe, I'm really curious, was that your intention for it to be a bird, or just that's just kind of the way it turned out? I'd like to know. So if you could type in a response there, but let's take a look at it. Let's look at it from different angles here. Okay, so Zoe's saying that she didn't intend it to look like a bird, but she did intend it to be a weird face, and she was very successful. It was definitely a weird face there. Okay, so let's take a look at this because I really like the creativity that you showed here. So let's look at it from the back side. Okay, so here is her handle, and she's got a gear on here, but it's not interfacing with any other gear. So it doesn't actually serve a purpose as a gear. Maybe the reason she put it on there was to use it as a spacer, as you know, so that the shaft didn't slide around. Maybe that's the reason that you put it on there. Oh, she also put a mouth, but it didn't show up. Okay, all right. So this gear here doesn't really serve any function other than maybe being a spacer, and no harm with that. It looks cool. Okay, so you see here we have a shaft that goes through here, and this shaft is directly connected to the output flag. So if you look at it here, so the output flag is on the same shaft as the handle. So what that means is that we turn the handle one time, the output shaft is going to turn one time. So the multiplier for Zoe's creation is 1. Okay, it's not geared up or it's geared down. At least the multiplier for the output flag here. But the eyes, now this is what I thought was really cool, Zoe. The eyes, they are connected. So we got a gear here connected to there. So here is where it really gets cool. And this was what I really liked about Zoe's creation. So when she turns the handle here, not only is this little, I'm going to call it a beak, just because that's what it looked like to me. So when she turns the handle, the beak is going to spin, but also the eyes are going to spin, which is really cool. And so what's going to happen is that this eye is going to spin one way, and the other eye is going to spin the other way. And so now here's where it's a shame that we're not working in SolidWorks, because if we were doing this in SolidWorks, you could actually spin it and you could actually see what happens. This is one of the great features that SolidWorks has that Tinkercad does not. And so you would be able to see the eyeball on the right here is spinning clockwise, and the eye on the left spinning counterclockwise at the same time that the output flag is spinning. So Zoe, I really love your creation, so I give you bonus points for creativity. Way to go. Okay, and then but the real prize here goes to Sky. So let me go back here to my Tinkercad, the dashboard. Okay, come on, okay, hang on. It's a little bit slow here. It takes a while because Sky's creation has so much to it. Take a look at what Sky did, guys. This is really amazing. Okay, so what he did was he created a complex gearbox that's got all sorts of gears on it. Okay, and it branches off in different ways. All right, so this right here, let me zoom in on this. Okay, so this here was the drive axle. Okay, so if you look at it, the drive axle comes through here and it connects onto our secondary axle. So we're going from a small gear to a large gear. So that means we're gearing down. So every one turn of our drive axle gives us less than one turn of our other shaft here. Okay, and by the way, did you notice he labeled the axles here? So up here is axle B, and down here, okay, so he calls that axle 2. So he's labeled his axles, which I thought was really cool. Okay, so our secondary axle here comes through and it connects on to a gear here. But if you look, we've got gears on both sides of the support structure. Okay, so the inner gear interfaces with the gear up here, which then leads to this output flag, which he called this flag A. okay? And so every time that you spin the handle, flag A is going to spin a certain amount of number of times. But at the same time that it's doing that, okay, this drive axle is also driving this gear up here, which is connected to a gear up on top. So then we've got this other axle up on top here, okay? And this other axle is connected to a gear here, which is connected to yet another axle here. So Sky, you really, I mean, you hit the ball, you hit the baseball out of the park with this one. This one's great, okay? So over here we've got this, but wait, we're not done yet. This gear interfaces with another gear over on this side. A little hard to see if I zoom out, maybe it's a little easier to see. So this gear is driving this gear up here, okay? And so we got another flag connected up here. So holy cow, this is a complex one. Okay, so Sky has two different flags that are both spinning in different directions. So way to go, Sky. You definitely made me say, wow, I really liked your creation. So yes, I did give you bonus points for that, for sure. He forgot to label the last axle. That's okay, Sky. Don't worry. I'll give you a pass on that. So good job there, Sky. Okay, so let me come back to, that's a Brug moment, yeah, for sure. Okay, so let me come back here to my PowerPoint presentation. Where did that go? That was this one here. Okay, so hang on. Okay, so here was Zoe's creation. Whoops, hang on there. Okay, and so this was Sky's creation. And as of last night, those were the only ones that people had submitted. So those are the only ones that I've commented on. So hopefully, those of you that hadn't submitted them by last night, hopefully you went on this morning and submitted them then. And so that's pretty much all I have to say today. So I didn't give any homework today, and I'm also not going to give a quiz either. So I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. And then the plan is that next week, we are going to talk more about the gear trains. And so we're pretty much done with CAD right now. Now we'll probably use CAD as we do the assignments next week and the following weeks, but I'm not going to teach you new stuff in CAD. Right now, you guys know enough about CAD that I think we can call it good. So we're going to end the unit with CAD here. We're going to go on, and next week we're going to talk about machines. And this gear train that we've worked with is a great introduction because this gear train is a machine. So when you turn the handle, you either you either increase the amount of times that the output shaft spins, or you decrease the amount of times. And we're going to talk next week about why you would want to increase it sometimes, or why you might want to decrease it other times. And I will give you assignments where, like for instance, I will say, I want you to give me a multiplier of such and such number. And then you have to figure out how to connect the gears in order to give me the multiplier that I have specifically asked for. But that's all next week's stuff. Don't worry about it for now. So I think we're done for the day, unless anybody has any questions. I'll pause a minute. Any of you have any questions or comments you want to type in? So Zoe's saying thank you. So yeah, you deserved it, Zoe. The rest of you, anything? Okay, so let me say going once, going twice, sold. Oh, okay, well, a question popped up at the last minute. Okay, so Don's wants to know if there are any other free CAD programs that you should know about. There are some out there. Autodesk makes a version. There's a bunch of Fusion 360. Have you heard about? There's several of them, but you know what I recommend is I just say focus in on two CAD programs. Tinkercad I like because it's the simplest one that I have found. It's incredibly simple, and as you've seen here, you can do some pretty good stuff with it. But it does have some severe limitations. So if you want to go to the next step, now that you're familiar with Tinkercad and you want to go to the next step, I recommend SolidWorks. Okay, and there is a free version of SolidWorks. Did you guys get remember a couple classrooms ago, couple class sessions ago, I gave you the information for how you can get this free version of SolidWorks. Now it's a limited time offer, and I can't remember how long it's good for. It's like maybe, usually they're like a month or something like that. So you could use SolidWorks for free for a month. And if you like SolidWorks after that, because Ames is part of a robotics group called FIRST Robotics, the SolidWorks company has given our school a few free licenses to their software, which is normally like thousands of dollars. I mean, literally, SolidWorks charges several $1,000s per year for a license to use their software. But because they want to work together with schools, they have given us a couple dozen free licenses that I can give out to you. So if you want to go to the next step and you want to learn SolidWorks, that's what I would recommend as the next step. And if you guys want to get some one-on-one help, Mason Hershey and Luke Holt are very, very good at using SolidWorks. So I'm sure that they would be glad to help you. Oh, and by the way, speaking of which, let's see. Don't forget the CAD. Remember the robotics CAD assignment that I told you about that's due tomorrow? If you guys want to try entering that, you can. I've already seen one entry. Luke has sent me his entry. Now, I'm not going to show it to you because that wouldn't be fair to Luke, because it's not fair for you guys to see what he did. You need to get your own. But Luke has submitted an entry for a robotics contest, and it's very nice, Luke. I really like what you did. So the rest of you, if you want to win this contest, you're going to have to do something really nice too, because Luke has set a high bar. Okay. All right, so again, going once, going twice, sold. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.